My daughter's husband thinks I'm just a silly old lady who doesn't know a thing. He's always sneaking into my room, rummaging through my things, looking for something of value. But that night, when he opened the drawer where I keep the key to the safe, his face went as white as a sheet and then as yellow as an egg yolk. What he saw in there changed his life forever. And me? I just smiled in the dark. I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it's traveled. I couldn't sleep. I got into bed at 10 p.m. My eyes burned, but my mind was wide awake. I lay still in that old bed, listening to the ticking of the clock in the corner of the room. It was already 2:15 a.m. without a light on. I reached out to the nightstand and grabbed my cell phone. I opened the camera app. The screen lit up, showing a clear image of the room, captured by the mini camera hidden on the bookshelf. I checked it again to make sure it was still recording. Everything was in order. The angle was perfect, pointing directly at the second drawer of the old dresser next to the bed. I got up. I walked slowly to the dresser, my hands trembling. I opened the drawer to check the secret I'd hidden there so carefully. Everything was still in its place. I let out a silent breath. I closed the drawer carefully so as not to make a sound. I went back to bed, pulled the covers up to my chest, but kept my eyes open, holding my breath. I knew something was about to happen. It wasn't just the intuition of a confused old lady. It was the certainty of someone who has noticed the signs. Suddenly, I heard a noise. Soft, almost imperceptible footsteps climbing the old wooden stairs. Those stairs are more than 30 years old. Every step creaks if you don't know how to step. But he knew. He walked with precision, avoiding the creaky spots. I gripped the phone in my hand, my heart pounding a mile a minute, but I stayed still, pretending to be asleep. At exactly 2:43 a.m., the door to my room opened slowly. A shadow appeared in the crack. Tall, broad shoulders, unmistakable. It was Daniel, the husband of my daughter, Mary. He stood at the entrance. My eyes were half closed, just enough to see him survey the room and stop at my bed. He whispered, "Mom, Mom's asleep now." His voice was low but full of caution. He wanted to make sure I was sound asleep after drinking the glass of tequila he offered me last night. The glass that I knew had something weird in it. I didn't move. I lowered my breathing, pretending to be in a deep sleep, just as he believed I was. Daniel entered. Every step was stealthy, precise like a hunting cat. He knew the floor well. He knew which parts creaked and which didn't. I watched him from the slits of my eyes, seeing him approach the dresser. He knelt down and with his left hand and slowly pulled out the second drawer. He knew I kept my important papers there. He also knew about the safe key, the one he had been secretly looking for in the last few days. He put his right hand into the drawer, carefully but greedily rummaging around. And then, boom! An explosion. Not too loud, but enough to make the room shake. Daniel jumped. He stumbled backward, tripped over the bed, and almost fell. He grabbed his chest and started coughing. He let out a hoarse curse. Damn, what the hell was that? I turned on the light and sat up in bed, pretending to be startled. "Daniel, what happened?" I asked in a trembling voice, as if I had just woken up from a deep sleep. He was nervous. His eyes darted from me to the mess all over him, as if he didn't know where to begin. He raised his hand to try and brush it off, but only made things worse. I knew he hadn't expected it. He had no idea that I had already planned everything, that I had gotten ahead of his move. I watched him under the dim light as I heard the hurried footsteps of Mary, my daughter, coming up the stairs. At that moment, the memories hit me like a silent wave, taking me back to when it all began. 3 weeks ago, it was still dark, and a drizzle was falling on the porch. I was in the kitchen washing a coffee cup. The steam from the hot water warmed my hands. The house was silent. All I could hear was the dripping of the faucet and the ticking of the clock on the wall. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, breaking the calm. I was startled. Who could it be at this hour? I dried my hands on my apron and went to open the door, my heart a little uneasy. When I opened the door, I saw Mary, my daughter, standing there with Daniel, her husband. They both looked exhausted, with dark circles under their eyes. In one hand, they carried plastic bags, and in the other, an old suitcase. Mary rushed to hug me tightly, saying in a low voice, "Mom, I'm sorry for not calling ahead." I felt her warm embrace, um, but it was full of weariness. I patted her on the back and said, "Come in now, it's cold." Daniel, behind her, greeted me with a nod and a forced smile. I invited them in and closed the door, trying to keep the cold out. In the living room, Daniel dropped onto the old couch, his hand on his chin, looking around as if evaluating the house. Mary came with me to the kitchen. She helped me prepare 2 more cups of coffee. She took the cups from the cabinet slowly, as if carrying something heavy inside. I didn't ask anything. I just watched in silence. When the coffee was ready, I brought it to the table and sat down across from them. "What happened? Why did you come here so suddenly?" I asked calmly, although I couldn't hide my curiosity. Mary looked at Daniel and then at me. She took a deep breath. "Mom, we're in trouble. Daniel lost his job at the advertising agency a month ago. And since I got married, I've been a homemaker. We have almost no savings left and we can't cover the bank debt." Her voice trailed off as if she was ashamed. Daniel intervened in a grave tone. "The bank already foreclosed on our apartment in Houston. Mom, we have nowhere to live. We just hope you'll let us stay for a few weeks until I find another job." I looked at them both. His eyes gleamed as he spoke, but something in his expression made me uncomfortable. I nodded and said, "It's fine. You can stay here. There are empty rooms." Mary smiled at me and took my hand. "Thank you, Mom. I promise it won't be for long." I motioned for her to not worry and told them to take their things to the back room, the one I had left empty since my husband died 6 years ago. I was the first to go in to clean it. I dusted the table and the windows. That room had been where my husband used to read. Now all that was left was the double bed and some old furniture. I opened the curtains to let in the light and cleaned the small bathroom next to it for them to use. Mary helped me change the sheets while Daniel stood at the door, watching everything in silence. I caught him glancing down the hallway that leads to my room, but at the time I thought it was just my imagination. At noon, I went into the kitchen to prepare a traditional meal, steaming hot noodle soup, mole poblano that smelled delicious, and some freshly made tortillas. The aroma of the food spread throughout the house, lifting a little of the heavy atmosphere that had been there in the morning. Mary ate with gusto and even said, "Mom, you cook just as well as you did when I was a kid." Daniel also ate, but more quietly. He only looked up from time to time to smile at me. He said, "This house must be very old, right, Mom?" I nodded. "Yes, your father and I bought it in '92. It's old, but it's sturdy." He nodded as if he understood. He got up and started walking down the hallway, looking at each door. I saw him stop for a little longer than necessary in front of my room's door. That look made me pause for a moment, but I told myself it must be my imagination. I'm old and I overthink things. In the evening, Mary went out onto the balcony to make a call. She was talking in a low voice, probably to a friend. Daniel was in the living room on his phone. He said he was looking for a job. I brought a plate with chopped fruit and put it on the table. As I bent down, I caught a glimpse of a sports betting page on his phone, full of numbers and odds. He quickly changed the page and opened a job search site. He smiled awkwardly. "Thanks, Mom. That's so thoughtful." I just nodded without saying anything and went back to the kitchen, drying my hands on the sink. I looked toward the yellow light coming from my room. I felt a pang of unease in my chest. I didn't know exactly why. It was the way Daniel looked at the house, how quickly he hid the bedding page, or that look he gave my room. I shook my head, telling myself I was exaggerating, but deep down, something told me that something was off. This house, where my husband and I had built so many memories, now held something I couldn't name. A week after Mary and Daniel moved in, the house seemed to have gotten used to their presence. I continued to wake up early, make coffee, and sweep the patio. The usual routine. Mary would often help me clean, and Daniel was almost always in the living room on his phone, claiming to be looking for a job. From the outside, everything seemed normal, like any other family. But inside me, that feeling of unease kept growing, especially after some things Daniel said and did. That night, I made tamales, Mary's favorite dish since she was a little girl. We all sat down for dinner. The smell of corn and ground chicken filled the house. Mary laughed more. She told stories about the neighborhood kids. Daniel ate little, just swirling his glass in his hands and staring into space. When I got up to clear the plates, he suddenly spoke as if nothing was wrong. Hey, Mom, is this area safe? I've heard there are gangs in the Santa Teresa neighborhood lately. I was washing the dishes and looked at him through the glass partition separating the kitchen. It's very quiet here, Daniel. Since Mary's father was alive, nothing has ever happened, I replied, trying to sound natural. He nodded with a smile and then asked, but if something were to happen, do you have cameras? Where do you keep your important papers? That question made me freeze with the plate half washed. Why did he care where I kept my papers, and why was he asking if I had cameras at home? Mary, who was clearing the table, jumped into the conversation with a slightly annoyed tone. Daniel, that's a weird question. He let out a forced laugh, raising his hand as if to apologize. I'm just worried about Mom. She's lived alone for so many years, she must have a safe, right? A shiver ran down my spine. He said it so casually, but his gaze, the way he tilted his head, waiting for my answer, made me feel that something was not right. I smiled and replied, don't worry. Yes, but just to keep old papers, there's nothing valuable, and no, I don't have cameras. I live alone. I don't need them. He nodded and looked down at his phone as if the conversation was over, but I knew it wasn't, that it wouldn't end there. I finished washing the dishes, dried my hands, and went up to my room. I closed the door and sat on the bed. I couldn't shake the feeling that Daniel was testing me. The questions about the safe, the papers, the cameras, it was all too specific, too strange. I wondered if I was overreacting. But then I remembered his look the other day when he stood in front of my room, and that time I saw him on a bed in sight. No, this wasn't an old lady's imagination. I decided to do something to be sure. When I worked as an accounting secretary at the high school, a colleague taught me a trick to use a toothpick to know if someone had moved your things. I went to the kitchen, took a toothpick from the container, and went up to my room. I opened the second drawer of the wooden cabinet. That's where I keep my important papers, savings books, and the safe key, hidden under adhesive tape in a corner. I carefully placed the toothpick across the edge of the drawer so that if someone opened it, it would break or fall. I closed the drawer, checked it again, and went to sleep. The next day, I woke up early, as always. I swept the patio and hung the freshly washed clothes. There was still a mist, the air was cool. As I was hanging the last shirt, I saw Daniel coming out of the hallway near my room. He was trying to hide, as if he hadn't expected to see me there. I waved to him. Good morning, Daniel. He nodded uncomfortably, mumbled something, and went into the kitchen. I followed him with my eyes, my heart beating faster. Something was not right. I went up to my room, closed the door, and went straight to the drawer, and the toothpick was broken. A piece of it was on the floor. The drawer was out of place by about an inch, not how I had left it. I opened it and checked everything. A folder was flipped over. A savings book had a corner bent, as if someone had quickly looked through it. Luckily, the tape hiding the key was still in place. Maybe he didn't see it. I sighed in relief, but my heart was heavy. Daniel had been in my room. He was looking for the key or something else. I closed the drawer and left everything as it was so he wouldn't know that I knew. In the afternoon, when Mary returned from her job at the library, I poured her a glass of water, and with all the courage I could muster, I said, Mary, have you noticed that Daniel has been very interested in the house lately? She raised her eyebrows. What do you mean, Mom? I told her bluntly, but clearly that I'd seen Daniel coming out of my room that morning, and that the drawer had been moved. I didn't mention the toothpick. I just spoke of my unease. Mary froze, the glass trembling slightly in her hand, but then she shook her head, a little annoyed. Mom, don't think badly. You must have been mistaken. This morning he told me he was looking for cold medicine in the cabinet, and that he went to call me. I looked into her eyes and saw a mix of doubt and defensiveness. Daniel had already come up with an excuse. I remained silent. I didn't want to argue without clear evidence. Yes, maybe I'm overthinking it, I said. But deep down, I knew it wasn't true. From that day on, Mary hardly ever mentioned Daniel. When she talked to me, she would change the subject to her job or the neighborhood kids, as if she were avoiding talking about her husband. I didn't pressure her, but I started to pay more attention. That night, we were watching an old movie that Mary liked. Daniel was sitting in a corner of the couch. From time to time, he would give me a quick, cold look, as if he knew that I suspected something. I pretended not to notice anything and kept joking with Mary about the movie, but in my head, I was already thinking about the steps I needed to take. I had to protect this house, my daughter, and myself. 2 days after the conversation about the safe, I felt that the atmosphere in the house was heavier than ever. I tried to act normal in front of Mary, but every time I saw Daniel, something twisted inside me. He was still friendly, calling me mom with his usual smile, but I no longer believed that facade. That night, after dinner, I said I was tired and went up to my room early. I wanted to be alone to calm down and think about what to do. Sitting on the bed, I took out my new cell phone. Last week, when my old one broke, I asked Mary to buy me a mid range iPhone. I don't understand much about technology, and all the apps confuse me. I was struggling with the screen, trying to save the number of my friend Sarah to call her the next day for advice. But the more I tried, the more mistakes I made. Around 10 p.m., I opened the Notes app intending to write a reminder, but instead of writing, I accidentally pressed the record button. The screen showed recording, and I didn't know how to stop it. I sighed, grabbed the phone, and decided to go out to the porch to ask Mary for help. I walked slowly so as not to wake anyone. The house was dark, with only a faint light coming from the living room. As I was about to reach the porch, I heard a low voice coming from the garden. It was Daniel. He was talking on the phone in a hushed tone, as if he didn't want to be heard. I stopped dead in my tracks, my heart pounding. I don't know why, but something told me I shouldn't call him. Instead, I hid behind the glass door that leads to the garden. It was ajar, just enough for me to hear everything. Yes, I swear, the old lady has a safe. I already know where she keeps the key, papers, cash, for sure. There's also the bank information, Daniel said in a low but clear voice. I froze, gripping the phone so tightly my hand hurt. He was talking about me, about my safe. He continued, "Tomorrow is the perfect opportunity. Mary has a neighborhood meeting from 7 to 9 p.m., and the old lady is easily tricked. I have some strong sleeping pills. She'll sleep like a log." I felt my blood run cold. Sleeping pills? What was he planning to do to me? I forced myself to stay still, even though my hands were trembling, and Daniel let out a laugh that gave me goosebumps. "Don't worry, I'm going to clean it out. I'll take everything and tell Mary I have to go to Boston for work. Then I'll leave and she can cry all she wants. She'll never find me." He paused and then added in a voice that felt ready to get away with it, "You know what? The old lady is so naive. She thinks I treat her daughter well because of love. But I'm actually running from debt collectors. I already owe $800,000. I felt the air leave my lungs. $800,000. This guy wasn't just after my things. He was also in debt up to his neck and was using Mary to escape. I wanted to run out and scream in his face, but reason held me back. I needed to stay calm. I backed away and quietly went back into my room just as he hung up the phone and entered the house. He didn't see me, thankfully. I closed the door, locked it, and fell onto the bed, my head in a mess. I looked at the phone and froze. The screen was still on. It said recording 527. I realized with a jolt that everything Daniel had said had been recorded. With trembling hands, I fumbled to find the stop button. The audio was saved in a folder that was hopefully secure. I hid the phone under my pillow, not daring to leave it anywhere else. For the first time in my life, I felt real fear. Not fear of poverty or loneliness, but of betrayal. Daniel not only wanted to take what was mine, he also planned to leave Mary with a pile of lies. I lay down, staring at the ceiling. Outside, the wind moved the shingles on the roof, making a soft noise. I thought of Mary, so innocent, believing that Daniel truly loved her. If I didn't do something, that guy would not only take the money, but he would also shatter her trust and her future. I clenched my fist, determined to do something. I couldn't let him win. I couldn't let him ruin our lives. The next morning, I woke up without having slept a single hour. Daniel's words kept replaying in my head. I put on my old shawl and got ready to go see Sarah. She's my lifelong friend. She was a criminal investigator before she retired and lives just 3 blocks away. If anyone could help me find a way to stop Daniel, it was her. After breakfast, I told Mary, "I'm going to the store near the market to get some things for my sewing project." She didn't suspect a thing. She even put some change in my hand. "Take these in case you see something else," she said with affection. I nodded, my heart heavy for lying to her, but I couldn't tell her anything. I left the house. The cool morning air cleared my head. I walked a short distance and knocked on Sarah's door. She opened it with her usual smile, but it disappeared as soon as she saw my face. Come in. What happened? Why do you look like that? She said, pulling me into the living room. I sat on her old couch. The smell of wood and fabric calmed me down a little. Without beating around the bush, I took out the phone, played the recording, and handed it to her. Sarah remained silent with her cup of coffee in her hand, squinting to concentrate. When the recording ended with Daniel's mocking laugh, she put the cup on the table and was silent for a few seconds. Then she looked at me and said in a grave voice, "This is serious, my friend. That bastard not only wants to rob you, he also plans to leave Mary stranded. We have to act carefully with clear evidence. Otherwise, your daughter will keep falling for his game." I sighed, clutching the edge of the shawl. I know, but I don't want to get into a legal fight, Sarah. Mary would fall apart if she found out the truth like this. I just want to teach Daniel a lesson he'll never forget and protect my daughter from that scoundrel. Sarah nodded. She took a sip of her coffee and asked, "So, do you want to call the police or just give him a scare so he'll leave?" I replied without hesitation, "Give him a scare. This recording is evidence, but the police won't believe us because Daniel hasn't done anything concrete yet. I need something that will expose him right there and then." Sarah smiled with that spark in her eyes that she had when she was an investigator. "Then we have to set a trap with a video, with proof. That way no one will be able to deny it. Do you have any ideas?" I thought for a while and asked, "With a camera? But I'm not good with those things." Sarah got up and clapped her hands. "Leave that to me, but you have to think about how to do it. Something that shows his face, literally. Something to scare him and leave him with no way out." I remembered the video of the confetti fireworks that exploded at my niece's wedding a few years ago. An idea came to me and I laughed. If he wants to take the key from the drawer, he'll take it with a confetti surprise included. I was thinking of a confetti bomb. What do you think? Sarah burst out laughing and slapped her thigh. "Perfect. It doesn't hurt, but it will make him look ridiculous. You're still as smart as ever. Let's go all out." She went into her room and came back with a small camera with a magnet and a motion sensor. "This is controlled from your cell phone. I'll show you how to install and use it. It's easy." She sat down next to me, took out her cell phone, and started explaining step by step. "You put this in a corner of the room where you can get a good view of the drawer. It has a sensor. It only records when there's movement. The video is sent directly to your phone through this app." She showed me how to download the app, connect the camera, and check the signal. I followed the instructions, even though my hands were trembling a little with nerves. When we finished, Sarah patted me on the shoulder. "Good luck, old friend. Don't let that guy win. If anything happens, let me know immediately." I nodded, feeling like I had finally regained some strength after so many days of anguish. On the way home, I stopped by a stationery store near the market and bought 3 confetti cannons, the kind you use at weddings. Also, some adhesive tape, string, and a small pair of scissors. The clerk looked at me curiously and asked, "Are you having a party?" I gave a forced smile. "Yes, I'm preparing a big surprise." I got home at noon. I said I was tired and went up to my room early to have time to prepare everything. I locked the door, took out the camera, and stuck it on the bookshelf next to the bed. With my phone, I checked the angle and adjusted it to focus on the second drawer, the same one Daniel would surely check, looking for the safe key. I opened the drawer, took the confetti cannon, and taped it inside. I tied a string to the trigger mechanism so that when he reached in and touched it, it would explode and the confetti would fly everywhere. To test it, I used an aluminum spoon. Boom! It was loud, but not too loud. The confetti glittered all over the floor. I smiled. The trap worked perfectly. I cleaned everything up, put in a new tube, and left everything as if nothing had happened. That night at dinner, Daniel was more restless than usual. He kept looking at his watch. He ate very little and left his chopsticks on the table. I asked him in a calm voice, "Why aren't you eating much tonight, Daniel?" He dodged the question. "Oh, I'm just waiting for an email about a new job. Maybe they'll reply tomorrow. That's why I'm nervous." Mary nodded, believing him immediately. I didn't say anything. I pretended to be focused on my plate. Inside, I knew that tomorrow night, when Mary went to the neighborhood meeting, would be the key moment. Before going to sleep, I checked everything. The drawer was closed, as always. The sheets were stretched out. The curtains were properly drawn. The room looked calm, just like every other day, but I knew that a trap was ready for the next night. I lay down, my phone next to the pillow. I closed my eyes, but I didn't sleep. I was waiting, ready for Daniel's next move. And mine. That night, the atmosphere in the house felt heavier than ever. Although I tried to act normally, Mary was getting ready to go to a neighborhood meeting. She was in front of the mirror in the living room, adjusting her jacket. "I'm leaving now. I'll probably be back late, Mom," she said in a soft, hurried voice. I nodded with a smile. "Yes, be careful, honey." My gaze shifted to Daniel, who was sitting on the couch, rubbing his hands together with an unusually bright look. He motioned to Mary and said in a sweet tone, "I'll stay home with Mom. Don't worry." Mary smiled, gave him a kiss on the cheek, and went out the door. I watched her go with a heavy heart, knowing that this was the moment Daniel had been waiting for. The front door closed and the house fell silent. I started clearing the table, stacking the plates to take them to the kitchen. Daniel got up and went to the liquor cabinet in the living room where my late husband's favorite bottle of tequila was kept. He took the bottle, swirled it in his hands, and then turned to me with a friendly smile. "Would you like a drink with me, Mom? Just the two of us, like adults?" His voice was smooth, but his eyes gleamed as if hiding something. I didn't have time to answer. He quickly took 2 glasses from the shelf and poured tequila into both. I was by the sink with my back to him, washing some spoons. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him take something out of his pocket, a small white pill that he quickly dropped into the glass on the left. My heart skipped a beat, but I kept my face calm, as if I hadn't seen a thing. He came over and offered me the glass on the left. "This one is for you." In his other hand, he had his glass ready to toast. "Cheers, Mom," he said enthusiastically. I took the glass with a smile. "Why don't you go get something to snack on? That way we can enjoy it more." He nodded. "I'll go get some right away." He went to the kitchen without taking his eyes off me, checking to see if I would drink. I raised the glass, pretended to take a sip, but only let the tequila fill my mouth. The strong taste burned my tongue. His eyes shone with triumph before he disappeared through the kitchen door. Quickly, I grabbed a napkin, spat the tequila into it, crumpled it up, and threw it in the trash can under the sink. When Daniel came back with a plate of tortillas and a bowl of salsa, I was already sitting down with an empty glass in my hand. He put the plate on the table. He sat across from me with a satisfied smile. "How did you like this tequila, Mom? It's good, right?" he asked casually. "Yes, it's very good," I replied, keeping my voice even. "Mary liked this brand a lot. When her father was alive, he always had a little on the weekends," I added to prolong the conversation and observe his reactions. Daniel nodded, took a sip of his drink. "It's quality. How did you manage to keep this bottle for so long? You must be very fond of it, aren't you?" He tilted his head, looking at me as if trying to steer the conversation where he wanted it to go. "Yes, I like it, but I hardly ever drink anymore," I said, putting the glass on the table and running my finger over the rim to hide my nerves. "And how is your job search going? Has anything promising come up?" I asked. "Shin-na-na," changing the subject to see what he would say. Daniel smiled, but it was a forced smile. "Almost, Mom. There's an advertising agency downtown that said they would be doing interviews this week. If it works out, we'll be moving soon. We won't bother you for much longer." He spoke without looking at me, his eyes on the table as if he were trying to avoid the question. I nodded, pretending to believe him. "That's good. I hope you can get back on your feet soon." Then I took a piece of tortilla, dipped it in the salsa bowl, and ate slowly. Daniel took another sip of tequila, but now he was watching me more closely, as if wanting to see if I already looked tired or dizzy. "Eat, Mom. This dish goes perfectly with the tequila," he said in a sweet voice, pushing the plate of tortillas toward me. "I've seen you looking tired lately. You're probably worrying too much about us. Get more rest, okay?" His words sounded tender, but I knew he was waiting to see if the sleeping pill had taken effect yet. I smiled faintly. "Yes, I'm getting old. I can't worry so much. You go on and eat. I'm going to lie down for a bit." I got up and walked with a little stumble, barely tripping on the step. Daniel immediately got up. "Mom, be careful," he said with a voice full of fake concern. I turned around and gave him a weak smile. "It's nothing. I think I had too much." He nodded with a look that didn't hide how satisfied he was. He thought his plan had worked, that the sleeping pill had made me a little groggy. Back in my room, I closed the door carefully, without making a sound. I went to the bathroom, rinsed my mouth thoroughly, and got rid of any trace of tequila. I sat on the bed, took out my phone, and checked the camera signal. The image showed the perfect angle from the bookshelf, focused on the second drawer of the cabinet where I had set the confetti trap. Everything was working perfectly. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down, although my heart was pounding. About 30 minutes later, lying in bed, pretending to be asleep, I heard Daniel talking on the phone on the balcony. His voice sounded excited. I already gave her the sleeping pill. If that old lady gets up, I'll shave my head. The safe is mine. He laughed to himself, yeah, confident, as if everything was already his. I gripped the phone tightly, trying not to let my rage make me lose control. He thought I had fallen into his trap, but in reality, he was walking straight into mine. In a few hours, everything would be clear, and Daniel would have to pay for every lie. I remained motionless in bed, my eyes half open, waiting for the moment Daniel would enter. At 2:43 a.m., he sneaked into the room, walking like a cat so as not to make the floor creak. He crouched in front of the second drawer of the cabinet and reached inside to search. Boom! The explosion thundered, and confetti flew everywhere, covering him like a shiny Christmas ornament. Daniel was startled. He backed away, tripped over the bed, coughed loudly, and started cursing. Damn it, and what the hell is this? I turned on the light and sat up, pretending to be surprised. Daniel, what happened? He stood there stunned, his eyes lost, looking at me and then at the confetti on his clothes and hair, not knowing what to say. The explosion woke Mary. I heard her footsteps running from downstairs, her voice full of panic. Mom, what happened? Was there a thief? Are you okay? The door burst open and Mary froze in the doorway, her hair disheveled and her pajamas wrinkled. Her eyes widened as she saw Daniel in the middle of the room, a mess, covered in glitter all over his body, as if he had just come from a chaotic party. Mary entered, clutching the bottom of her pajamas tightly, her voice trembling. What are you doing here? What is this? What were you doing in my mom's room in the middle of the night? Her gaze went from Daniel to me, full of confusion, as if she were trying to put the pieces together to understand what had just happened. Daniel, all nervous, tried to shake the glitter off his clothes, but the more he did, the more it stuck. He was sparkling under the yellow light, making him look even more ridiculous. He stammered in a broken voice, Honey, I heard a strange noise. I thought someone had broken in. I just came up to check that your mom was okay. I didn't expect something like this to explode. He raised his hands as if to prove he was innocent, but the glitter fell everywhere, making him look even more pathetic. It must have been a rat trap or something, right, Mom? You set something up. He turned to me, his eyes pleading for help. But I just sat on the bed, looking at him with a mix of anger and pain in my chest. I had waited for this moment for so long, and now he was walking straight into his own trap. Mary shook her head, and her expression went from confusion to suspicion. She approached Daniel, her face red with rage, her voice sharp with anger. A strange noise? You went into my mom's room at 2 a.m. to check? Why didn't you wake me up? Why didn't you turn on the main light? And what is all this glitter? She pointed directly at him with a trembling hand, her eyes full of tears. Talk, Daniel. Enough with the excuses. I've noticed you've been weird these past few days. I thought it was about work, about the future we planned. But now what? What were you doing in my mom's room? Daniel took a step back, pale, sweat running down his forehead. Calm down, Mary. I swear I was just worried about your mom. This house is old. And yes, there was a thief. I heard noises and I came to see. The drawer just exploded on its own. I got scared too. Your mom must have set a trap against thieves. Right, Mom? He looked at me again, his voice trembling, trying to pull me into his lie to save himself. I saw the desperation in his eyes, how he swallowed and clenched his fists as if trying to hold on to his last hope. But I just shook my head in silence. I felt pain for Mary, my daughter, who had loved him blindly, who had given everything for this marriage. Mary stood still, her eyes wavering as if she wanted to believe Daniel. But common sense wouldn't let her. She turned to me, her voice low, almost pleading. Mom, tell me something. Yes, you set a trap. You know what's happening, right? I sighed, took the phone from under the pillow, and opened the voice recorder app. Listen to this, Mary, I said, in a calm voice, but full of pain. I played the recording from the night before. Daniel's voice sounded loud and clear. Yes, I swear. The old lady has a safe. I already know where she keeps the key. Tomorrow is the perfect opportunity. I have some strong sleeping pills. She'll sleep like a log. I'll take everything and leave. She's so naive. She thinks I love her just because I'm with her daughter. I already owe $800,000. The room fell silent. Mary stood frozen, her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with horror. She was pale, as if all the blood had drained from her body. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she didn't blink. She just stared fixedly at Daniel. What? What are you saying? Her voice broke, trembling with pain. You wanted to take everything from my mom. You gave her sleeping pills. You're full of debt. You lied to me from the beginning. All this was to pay off your bets. She took a step toward him, her voice getting louder. I trusted you. I defended you in front of my mom. I told her she was judging you wrong, and you're a scoundrel. Her tears fell nonstop, and her look went from shock to total fury, as if a fire that had been contained for a long time had been ignited. Daniel backed away until he hit the wall, his eyes wide. No, it's not like that. It was a joke from a friend. I wasn't going to do that. He raised his hand trying to touch Mary, but she slapped it away. A joke? Do you think I'm stupid? You went into my mom's room for the keys, didn't you? You used my mom and me to hide your debts. Get out now, Mary screamed, pointing her finger at the door. Sissy, her voice was trembling but firm. Pack your things. I don't want to see you here tomorrow morning. If you don't leave, I'll call the police. I swear, Daniel, I will. Daniel stood motionless, his face gray, his mouth open, unable to say anything. He looked at her, then at me as if pleading for one last chance. But Mary turned her face away, with tears still falling, her gaze icy. He staggered out of the room, with the glitter still stuck to his shirt, looking more pathetic than ever. His heavy footsteps were heard going down the stairs, getting farther and farther away. I got up and hugged Mary. Her body was trembling, but she wasn't crying loudly. She just leaned on my shoulder and whispered, Mom, I'm sorry, I didn't know. I stroked her hair gently. I'm sorry, too, for not having told you before, but I promise you that from now on, I won't let anyone hurt you again. I led her to sit on the bed without letting go of her hand. The truth was already out in the open, and Daniel had lost. But I knew that the road ahead for Mary wouldn't be easy. I just hoped that after this night she would come out stronger and that together we could get through this storm. After Daniel staggered out of the room, he went down the stairs, muttering curses, but not raising his voice, perhaps for fear that the neighbors would hear him. Mary stayed in the doorway with tears still on her cheeks, but with a firmer look, not as shocked as she was when she heard the audio. I took her hand and gently pulled her. Come down to the kitchen with me, honey. Mary nodded and followed me, walking as if on autopilot. In the kitchen, I poured her a glass of cold water and put it in her hands. She sat in the chair, clutching the glass tightly. Her gaze was fixed on the table, still not fully recovered. I sat across from her and spoke calmly. Leave everything in my hands. Everything will be okay. Mary looked up, her eyes a mix of pain and anger. Mom, I can't believe it. He deceived me all this time, and I didn't even realize it. Her voice trembled, but she gripped the glass even tighter, and her gaze turned cold. I'm never going to let him come back. I nodded without saying much. I just put my hand on her shoulder and patted her. I knew Mary needed time to process everything, and I was going to be there, as always. About 30 minutes later, we heard heavy footsteps from the living room. Daniel appeared in the kitchen doorway with 2 large bags, clothes spilling out because they were so poorly packed. He still had glitter in his hair and on his shirt, sparkling under the kitchen light, as if it were a reminder of his humiliation. He stood there, his face red, his eyes full of rage, but also with a little fear. He cleared his throat, trying to regain some confidence. I'm going to call my lawyer. I'm sure some of the assets in this house belong to us. I have rights. Don't think you're going to get rid of me so easily. His voice sounded tense, as if he were trying to intimidate me. Mary got up abruptly and slammed her hand on the table. Rights? You're talking about rights? The only thing you brought was debt. You want to sue? Go ahead. I'll personally give the judge a complete list of your gambling debts. Every penny you owe, Belle. Every lie you told. She pointed her finger directly at him. Her eyes reddened, but her voice was firm, with no hesitation. I got up, I walked to the living room cabinet, opened a drawer, and took out the bank statements and the house papers. I placed them in front of Daniel and spoke to him calmly. This house has been in my name since 1992, with all the documents in order. My husband and I bought it with hard work. You have nothing here. If you want to sue, go ahead, but I suggest you think carefully. Daniel looked at the papers. He turned pale, his mouth ajar, unable to say a word. He knew he couldn't win. He clenched his teeth, trying not to lose completely. You had it all planned, didn't you? You set a trap for me from the beginning, didn't you? I looked him straight in the eyes and replied slowly, how could I have planned something that I only discovered a few days ago when by chance I overheard your plan to take what doesn't belong to you? I don't know what you were planning to do next, but I'm not going to let you ruin my daughter's life. I didn't speak loudly, but every word was like a hammer blow. Daniel backed away with a look full of fear, as if he finally understood that he had lost. He turned around, grabbed his bag, and walked toward the front door, but as he opened it, he tripped over a garbage bag I had left on the porch and fell flat on his face. Glitter from his jacket shone under the streetlights. Mary stood in the doorway, looking down at him with a cold expression, not saying a single word. He got up as best he could, dusted himself off, and walked away, dragging his bag without looking back. The door slammed shut behind him with a sound that seemed like a final period. I took the key to the front door from the hanger and put it in my pocket. Mary came back and fell onto the couch, resting her head on my shoulder. She whispered in a hoarse voice, I don't know how to thank you, Mom. If you hadn't been here, I don't know what would have happened to me. She started to cry again, but this time I felt that something in her was getting stronger. I didn't say anything. I just gently squeezed her hand, feeling the warmth of her small hand in mine. We stayed there under the warm light of the living room. The ticking of the clock on the wall was constant, as if reminding us that we had survived a storm that night. Daniel had left, taken his lies and his ambition with him, but I knew that the road ahead for Mary was not going to be easy. I just hope that with my love and support, she will be able to find herself again and get ahead, stronger than ever. It's been a few weeks since the night Daniel left. The house is quieter now, but the wounds he left are still there, latent in Mary's heart and mine as well. We don't talk much about what happened, but every day my daughter and I are slowly regaining our peace, as if we were mending the broken pieces of our lives. Daniel called a couple of times. His number appeared on Mary's phone. She would just look at the screen, grip the phone tightly, and then shake her head, letting it ring until it stopped. I don't want to hear anything from him anymore, Mary said firmly. I nodded. I took out my phone and blocked his number in front of her. Do the same, honey, I told her. Mary nodded and did it. Her fingers moved quickly on the screen. Done, Mom, she said in a lighter tone, as if she had just let go of a chain. One morning we went to the notary's office together to redo the legal power of attorney for the house. I wanted to put her name on the papers to secure her future. But Mary shook her head, looking at me confidently. I want the house to stay in your name. I trust that you will know how to protect it. I looked at her and saw a firmness in her eyes mixed with the wounds that still hadn't healed. All right, I respect your decision, I replied, putting my hand on her shoulder, grateful for her trust. After everything, I carefully copied the recording and the video from the camera. I saved them on a U.S. bold drive and sent them, along with a precautionary letter, to the district attorney's office. I don't want to get into a legal fight, but I need to make sure that if Daniel bothers us again, we have evidence to defend ourselves. The notary official nodded. He received the papers and said, You are doing the right thing. It's never wrong to be cautious. I smiled, thanked him, and we left with Mary feeling a little more relieved. Mary no longer wanted to sleep in her old room, the one she had shared with her husband. I don't want to sleep in the same bed he used, she told me firmly. I nodded. I tidied up the living room and put a folding bed in a corner where a lot of light came in through the window. In the mornings, Mary liked that spot. She said the sunlight made her feel better. I also suggested we paint the front door and change the hallway rug, where there were still traces of glitter, even though we had cleaned it several times. Good idea, Mom, Mary said, smiling, and for the first time I saw her smile like she used to. We chose a light blue color to paint, and I stood watching as they changed the rug, feeling like I was finally erasing the last traces of Daniel. A week later, Mary received a call from the community library. They invited her for an interview for the loan assistant position. Mom, they accepted me, she shouted, running to the kitchen to hug me. I laughed and hugged her back. I knew you would. That day, I took her to a clothing store near the house. We chose some shirts in pastel colors the way she likes them, and a new silver gray fabric backpack. It's a gift to congratulate you, I said, handing her the bag. Mary smiled, her eyes shining. Thank you, Mom. I'll use it every day for work. Little by little, I started to see Mary smiling more often. She would always tell me things about the kids at the library, how they would fight over the adventure books. I also stopped my habit of locking my room door. The house felt alive again, as if we were getting back a little of what it used to be. One Monday morning, while I was tidying the table, Mary placed a light brown folder on it. I glanced at it and saw that it said, Civil Court Divorce Petition. She sat down and said quietly, without looking at me, I already sent the divorce petition online. I'm going to the courthouse tomorrow morning to sign. I don't want to know anything about him anymore. I nodded without asking any more questions, but inside I felt a great sense of relief, as if a weight had been lifted from my chest. That afternoon, we went to the dry cleaners to pick up the black skirt that Mary always wears to work. On the way back, we stopped by a little shop and she chose a wine-colored leather bag. For the new chapter of my life, she said, half jokingly, holding up the bag to get a better look. I smiled. You deserve good things. That afternoon, Sarah came over with a box of homemade cookies. I told her everything, from the trick with the colored powders to the night Daniel left. Sarah patted me on the shoulder and laughed heartily. See? He deserved it, that scoundrel. Now you two can start over. I nodded. It was all thanks to you, Sarah. If it weren't for that camera, I don't know what I would have done. One night, Mrs. Gloria, the neighbor from across the street, came over and asked me curiously, Is it true that you used some kind of glitter bomb to catch the thief? I laughed loudly. I'm old, but my mind still works. She laughed too and then told all the other neighbors, making me feel good, as if I had done something important. That night, I went to bed and listened to Mary turning the pages of a book in the living room. From time to time, she would cough a little because the smell of fresh paint was still noticeable. I smiled. The house no longer felt empty. We were rebuilding our lives, and this time without the shadow of that fraud. 3 months after everything happened, our lives had returned to a calm routine. Mary was doing well at her job at the library, and I had regained a peace that I thought was lost. There were no longer any trace of Daniel in the house, no nights of tension, no suspicious looks. It was just us rebuilding our lives piece by piece. That morning I woke up early, as always, just as the first rays of sun were peeking through the curtains. I made coffee and the smell filled the kitchen, making me feel calm. Then I went out to the porch and swept the dry petals that had fallen from the old plum tree in the yard. The sound of the broom, along with the birds chirping, made me smile. Mary came down the stairs wearing her light blue library uniform shirt, her new name tag shining with her name on it. She gave me a kiss on the cheek and said happily, I'll be home late tonight, Mom. We have a storytelling session for the neighborhood kids. I nodded and handed her the lunchbox I'd prepared, brown rice, some roasted chicken, and a vegetable salad. Thanks, Mom, she said, smiling. She hugged the lunchbox and quickly went out with her new backpack bouncing on her back. After Mary left, I sat at the table and opened a letter I'd just received from the district attorney's office. They informed me that the file I had sent about what happened with Daniel had been officially archived, as if everything was over. I let out a sigh of relief. I left the letter on the table and felt as if a door had been closed forever. I took out my phone and played the recording of Daniel's voice for the last time. What he said that night still gave me chills, but it no longer had any power over me. I pressed the delete button and saw the deleted message on the screen. A part of me felt liberated, as if I had gotten rid of something old and useless. In the afternoon, I put on a light sweater and walked to the corner coffee shop where I used to meet Mrs. Gloria and the group of friends from the knitting club. The place was small, with the smell of freshly ground coffee and warm bread. It always made me feel welcome. Mrs. Gloria was already there, along with Mrs. Alma and Mr. George, each with their ball of yarn and knitting needles. Oh, the glitter trap lady, Mrs. Gloria joked, her eyes twinkling. I laughed loudly and sat down. Traps. I'm just an old lady who wants to protect her house. Mrs. Alma intervened enthusiastically. You should open a business selling smart traps. They say you even used a hidden camera. That's for an expert. They all burst out laughing, and I laughed too. It was a moment of joy I hadn't felt in a long time. If I really open one, will you all help me name it? What sounds good? I asked as I took a sip of coffee. Mrs. Gloria clapped her hands. Call it Grandma's Trap. It sounds cool and direct. Mr. George shook his head. No, it has to be alarm glitter, elegant and scary. Mrs. Alma added, how about Brilliant Trap? That way the thieves won't forget it. We were all dying of laughter, throwing out ideas, talking about everything from the prices of yarn to neighborhood gossip. The afternoon flew by. I lost track of time and felt a peace that I hadn't felt in senses in a long time. When I got home, I saw a note on the table in Mary's handwriting. My mom, don't forget to eat dinner, then I left food for you in the microwave. I opened the microwave and there was a plate of fried rice with egg and vegetables, and next to it, a glass of orange juice. I smiled. I felt warmth in my chest. I turned on the yellow lamp, sat down to eat, as the gentle wind passed through the window cracks. The house was calm now, with no strange presences, no nights of fear. I got up, washed the dishes, and went out to the porch where I saw the moon peeking out from behind the plum tree. I whispered to myself, I'm an old mom, but from now on, no one will ever think I'm a silly old lady. I went back inside, turned off the porch light, and felt a sense of tranquility settle over me. My daughter and I had overcome it, and I know that we will continue to be strong together in the sunny days to come. After all that happened, the biggest lesson I learned is that you should never be naive or trust just anyone, especially those who approach you with a good face but hide bad intentions. It hurt. I felt devastated to see that my daughter had been deceived, but it was that betrayal that taught me to be strong, to use my mind and evidence to protect my family, because no one else is going to do it for you. Now that I can be here sharing this story with you, the message I want to leave is to be alert, listen to your intuition, and remember that after the storm, there is always calm, as it happened to Mary and me, who have now found peace. This story is fictional, but it is based on some real events. The names and places have been changed to protect the identity of those who were involved. We are not telling this to judge, but with the hope that someone will listen and stop to think, how many mothers are suffering in silence inside their own homes? I am truly curious. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? Would you choose to remain silent to keep the peace? Or would you dare to face it all to reclaim your voice? I want to know what you think, because every story is a candle that can light the way for someone else. God always blesses, and I firmly believe that courage leads us to better days. Did you enjoy my story? From which city are you listening? Let's meet in the comments. I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks, which helps me continue bringing you more stories. Thank you sincerely for your kind support. On the screen, you'll find 2 more live stories that I highly recommend. There is so much more waiting for you on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next live story.